and still mad as hell and pissed off. We need to occupy Congress.
Here we are in Friday Harbor, at Occupy Friday Harbor. Let's talk about the budget deficit. You know, there are a lot of people in Congress these days who say that we need to cut our way to a balanced budget. Ron Paul says if he gets elected president, he'll cut $1 trillion from the federal budget in the first year. Well, I'm going to talk a little bit about what's in the federal budget, and you think about how you're going to cut anything, much less $1 trillion from that budget. You decide, I'll tell you what's in there, and you decide what you want to cut. In 2010, the federal government spent approximately $3.5 trillion. That's a 3, a 5, and 11 zeros. Now, you would think that there's got to be a tremendous amount of slop in there, wouldn't you? Well, it turns out that the federal budget really has just a handful of categories. Let me tell you what they are. First of all, you've got defense and homeland security. That's about 20% of the budget, roughly $700 billion. How much of that do you want to cut? Then there's Social Security. That's another $700 billion, another 20% of the budget. We're already up to 40% of the budget. Have you seen anything you want to cut yet? Following that, another huge category, 21% of the budget, is Medicare, Medicaid, and the Children's Health Insurance Program. That's about $730 billion.
We watch a lot of Fox.
Then there is, that only leaves 3 other items. One of those is interest on the debt. That's 6%. That's about $200 billion. That's something you can't cut. Then there are 2 things that you might want to drill down into a little bit further. There are a series of programs that include federal retirees benefits and veterans benefits. That's about $250 billion. Is that something you can cut? Obligations to retired workers and veterans. Then there's about $70 billion for medical and scientific research. About $100 billion for transportation and infrastructure, bridges, airports, highways. Another $100 billion for education, most of which is Pell Grants for people who can't afford to go to college. I don't know if you've noticed, it's getting prohibitively expensive these days. So you can cut education funding and have a whole lot fewer people going to college. Then there's international aid that is non-defense related. That's a whopping $35 billion. And all other spending, including funding for the Congress, the Justice Department, the federal court system, all of that comes to a whopping $70 billion. Do you see anything in there that you think you can afford to cut so far? Anything substantial? The other series of programs are called safety net programs. Now, of course, that's welfare and stuff we can get rid of, right? Well, let's talk about what's in there. The biggest part of it is unemployment insurance. That was about $150 billion in 2010, and you could take that away. But then all the people that are unemployed, what are they going to do? How are they going to feed their families? How are they going to shelter them? And it takes that much money out of the economy. That's money that's certain to get spent. But you can cut that if you want. But again, that is a tiny, tiny fraction of the federal deficit. The second biggest part of that is food stamps and school meals. That's half what unemployment insurance is. That's $75 billion. You've got 47 million people whose primary source of nourishment is food stamps. You're going to cut that? Only $10 billion of that, despite what you hear, is actually for school lunches and school breakfast. Then there's $50 billion approximately for disabled for supplementary security income for people who have become disabled and are not eligible for Social Security, or people that can't work anymore. You're going to cut that. How are those people going to feed themselves? And you've got very small amounts for child care, low-income housing assistance, home heating assistance, and abused and neglected children. You could cut all of that and you wouldn't even begin to make a dent in the deficit. Then you've got earned income and child tax credits. That's about $70 billion a year. But what that is, that's payments to working poor people. In other words, it's an incentive for them to keep working. You cut that, they're going to have much less incentive to work. And again, this is for people at the very low end of the income scale who work and or who have children. And what essentially, if you cut that, you're putting a tax increase on those people. These are the people in our society who are the least able to afford that. So, all told, in 2010, the government spent $3.5 trillion. They only took in $2.1 trillion. So, to make that up, you would have to cut $1.4 trillion. You find me in that list that I just gave you $1.4 trillion worth of cuts. And good luck doing it without putting old ladies on the street, unplugging people on life support, and giving tax increases to people who are at the poor end of the income scale and who work for a living. Have a good day. Thanks very much.
We ready? It occurs to me, as I've been to a number of these protests down here at the courthouse on Friday at around noonish, that the one group that doesn't seem to be represented here is the people that have the most stake in what we're trying to do here. And what we're trying to do here is teach people what's going on in the world. And this is important stuff. You, the youth of America, have the right to choose the fate of the world. And it's time to get involved. Please show up at noon on Friday at the courthouse. One of these days, go to the library, look at some documentaries, find out what's going on. It's the most important thing in the world. Thank you very much. Peace.
I think it's dreadful that nuclear plants are being actually permitted anymore. This is going back to the dark ages, and we don't know what to do with the waste now. They're very dangerous, and they aren't even taking the guidelines from the Fukushima disaster, which is still going on. So I think it's a dreadful idea, and I think that we the people will keep it from being built ever, the new ones.
The red button is on. Okay, take two. The president of the Maldives, who's democratically elected, has been overthrown by what amounts to a coup, probably backed by the corporate structure. And the reason corporations are in on this is because he is the most outspoken advocate of fighting global warming. He's pledged to have the Maldives the first carbon neutral country in the world. He even had a cabinet meeting underwater to show what sea level rise was going to do. Now, it's time to get these corporations held to account, because they're actively pursuing disinformation about the global warming situation, which is absolutely real. Now, we can also, in addition to going after corporations, go after some local politicians who also have said publicly that they don't think global warming is real. There are one or two on the county council, and there are one or two on the Charter Review Commission. And if you want to know who they are, give me a call and I'll tell you. But you probably figured that out already. So that's my agitation message for the day. Get out there and do something. Thank you.
see another dog. Is there another dog on the horizon?